New University of Otago research has shown people of mixed race are considered more attractive unless those judging are thinking about what racial group the person belongs to. The research has been carried out by Professor Jamin Halberstadt of the Department of Psychology and another researcher from the University of California in San Diego. Professor Halberstadt is here to explain the what and the why of this issue. Good evening.
Good evening.
Tell us a little bit about what the research found.
Well, you had a pretty good summary of it right there, actually. We combined faces from Asian and Caucasian sources, and we asked people to rate their attractiveness, and we found that the blended faces, faces that were blends between Asian and Caucasians, were more attractive than either the original Asian or Caucasian faces. But that is only true if people don't have to try to classify the faces as Asian or Caucasian beforehand. Once you call their attention to the classification, then their attractiveness decreases. They like them less.
Why do you think people prefer or find more attractive those of mixed races?
Well, our hypothesis is all about how easy it is to classify faces. Or classify anything. People tend to like things that they find easy to understand or easy to put into categories. So this is a lot of my research before this has been looking at that phenomenon that people tend to like good examples of categories. They like a sparrow, better than a penguin, for example. They find it just easier they look at a sparrow and they right away can say, that's a bird. But a penguin sort of catches their attention and they find it harder to classify. And that difficulty in classification translates into dislike for the thing. And so we try to extrapolate that to faces. We think that when you blend faces together, you get an image that is more like a face. It's more face-like, right? And that's especially true for cross-race faces. That cross-race faces are good examples of faces. They are very easy to perceive and easy to classify.
Why do you think consideration of racial grouping made a difference?
Well, that's the key variable in our study, I think. One thing we noticed about cross-race faces and racial blends in general is that on the one hand, they are easy to classify. They look a lot like faces, but at the same time, they're very ambiguous. So it was a bit of a puzzle, so people don't like ambiguous things either. So we hypothesized that the key variable is whether you are thinking about them in terms of the component categories. If you think of, so Tiger Woods is you find an attractive person, but maybe not so much an attractive black man or attractive white man. Barack Obama is people find an attractive man, but maybe not an attractive black man. When you put the person in terms of the category they belong to, or one of the possible categories they belong to, you find that they're not such a good example of that specific category.
How was the research carried out?
Oh, it's pretty straightforward. For the most part, we create these images, these blends. You can do this yourself, actually, on the web. There's lots of morphing software that you can do and blend faces together. And you'll see when you do that, when you blend two faces together, the result is generally more attractive. So we created these faces and blended them together, and we asked people to rate their attractiveness. But in some conditions, before they had to rate the attractiveness, they had to classify whether the person was Asian or Caucasian. And we also have a study that uses nonverbal responses too. So we measure, this is done by my colleague Piotr Winkelmann, who is in San Diego. So he measures the electrical potential in your facial muscles. So you can associate that with how much people smile. So this is a way of asking how pleased people are when they look at a face. So we found nonverbally too that when people look at the Asian-Caucasian blends, they tend to smile more, but if you ask them first whether the person is Asian or Caucasian, they tend to smile less.
Why did you decide to carry out this research?
Well, as I say, we spent a lot of time studying this phenomenon of facial attractiveness and trying to understand why that is. That's a known phenomenon, that faces get more attractive when they are blended together. So we had been trying to understand that for a while in terms of this ease of categorization idea. But the Asian-Caucasian blends always pose this puzzle, because although many people have found them to be very attractive, you don't find that mixed-race people necessarily get the benefits of attractiveness that attractive people normally get. usually there's a huge halo effect around attractiveness. So if you're attractive, you get all sorts of good benefits. You earn more money and so on. But that's not the case. There's also a bias against mixed-race people in some cases. So we're trying to resolve that kind of paradox. Why is it that sometimes mixed-race people are liked? Why are they sometimes disliked?
Professor Jamin Halberstadt from the University of Otago, thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.